This is the Hofstra Radio Alumni Audio Yearbook. Today is August 22nd, 2024. Please tell us your name and the years you were at Hofstra Radio.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. My name's Kennedy Cymerman, and I was at the Hofstra Radio from 2017 to 2020.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your stories. If you could tell us what shows and programs you worked on at the station.
Yeah, so when I first joined, I really did not know where to even start, so I just kind of just jumped right in. I started out with the Rock and Roll Oasis show. I engineered a few community volunteer shows, specifically with Tim Healy, Profit Express. I believe I also did one with Gordon on his show, and then I also, again, since I didn't really know where to start, I also tried out and dabbled with the morning show as a traffic and weather reporter for a semester or two, and then I also tried out Newsline as their business and entertainment reporter.
Okay, wow, lots of things there for stories, I'm sure.
Right.
What titles and positions did you have at the station?
Yeah, so the what I just talked about was really just my beginning and getting involved with the station. But once my sophomore year rolled around, I found out that there was an EDM show, electronic dance music show that no one was producing. At the time, it was called Electro Kitchen. And honestly, that's really where my story begins because I met Jasmine Jones, who ended up becoming my co producer of what we renamed it and we rebranded it as Electro Beat. I hope that it's still called that, or if they
Hmm.
it, but I'm not sure. And yeah, we together we co-produced the show until she graduated, and then I believe I had one more co-producer the following year help me out. But I that's what I did the rest of my years at Hofstra was producing Electro Beat.
All right, very cool. Did you have any nicknames or on-air personas at the station?
Not necessarily at the station, but back in college, I actually, since I love my EDM, I actually picked up DJing and producing for fun. And my name was DJ Kende. I have a SoundCloud that I haven't touched in years, but yeah, I even DJed a few frat parties, and even was had a paid gig at the dance marathon fundraiser, so that was all fun, but I don't know if I think I addressed myself as DJ Kende in my mic breaks. I honestly can't even remember at this point, but yeah, that was my side name.
Okay, very cool. Well, it sounds like you've got a lot of great stories. So let's get into it. I like to ask this first question is sort of a two-parter, and you've addressed this a little bit, but first part, what brought you to the station, and then if you could describe what was the station like when you first got there, maybe people that you met, what it looked like, what it smelled like, what was happening when you first showed up.
Yeah. So when I went, college, I will preface, college was the best 4 years of my life. I'm from Buffalo, New York, and I was probably one of like, maybe like 10, maybe 50 people like out of my whole high school class that actually left Buffalo. So just coming to college in general was a very exciting experience for me. And I was even more excited to try new things, join clubs, put myself out there, really make the most of my college experience. So that's exactly what the radio station was. But I had zero radio experience. We didn't have radio in high school. I never had any involvement with radio besides listening to it and maybe winning a few contests on the radio in high school. But I don't really know what exactly propelled me to go to the station, just the idea of trying something new. And I also come from a music and theater background. I came to Hofstra as a drama major, then switched to a music major. But I've always been, the entertainment industry has always enticed me. So I just
Hmm.
wanted to join for fun.
So, was there maybe it was a part of a tour that led you to the radio station, or did you meet someone or
Yes,
see a sign that said,
I
"Hey, check this out"?
I definitely met some of like the I don't know, the leaders or whatever at the club carnival
Hmm.
just to get more information on how to apply and like how it all works. I remember like my first semester was definitely a little bit overwhelmed because I tend to bite off more than I can chew. So I think I applied for the radio station, but I never ended up going there because I just really it was just kind of applying for fun. But once the second semester of my freshman year rolled around, that's when I was like, you know what, I really want to take this more seriously and, really apply and really want to, join this. So when I did, I went to the station And of course, first person I speak with, John Mullen,
Mm.
really hit it off. I remember, so since I'm from Buffalo, my friend, I can't shut up about Buffalo sports and the Bills and the Sabres. So all I remember is that we were just talking along about Buffalo sports, and just I think that he was really impressed and like like the idea that I was open to trying anything at the station. I wasn't a person that was like I want to do this and this only. I had no experience, so I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was like I'm very much a I will try anything. So yeah.
You can't do much better than meeting John Mullen and
I
getting an
know, right?
introduction to
I
radio. I
know.
mean, that's a tremendous person to meet and to find out about radio. So you're
Exactly.
hooked, and I guess you do an interview, and then there's the training class. Is that
Yep.
right?
Yep. And that training class, yeah, that was my second semester of freshman year, and I really got a lot out of it. Like I obviously everyone was so stressed about the test at the end, but like I wasn't in some classes sometimes you'll just study just because you want to pass the class, but like this material was I genuinely wanted to learn and wanted to remember and wanted to take with me into the future. So I enjoyed the training class.
Well, that's my next question is a lot of people aren't necessarily sure what they're signing up for. It's basically like a sixth course that you're taking. You're
Right.
meeting once a week for an hour or however long it is, and it's fairly intense. Do you remember much from the class?
Honestly, like I said, I mean, definitely remember it being intense. And just the idea of like, if you fail, yeah, you just, of course, you fill your head with all those thoughts. But I mean, I was a good student though, and I had a very good, like, I always studied, so I had like a lot of tricks to remember a lot of the things. So I mean, it was just more so kind of battling the idea of like failing it, you know what I mean? But no, I really, really took a lot in, and fast forwarding to today, I now work for iHeartMedia, and I remember in the class when they would say, these are things that they use professionally, and things that yeah, professional radio hosts use and ever, and they weren't kidding because there are things that like in my day to day I'll hear about. I'm like, oh my god, I remember learning about that in class.
Hmm. Yeah. So do you? I guess John was teaching the class, or do you remember any of the students or anybody else that was
I'm
leading it?
so bad with names, and honestly, again, it's sad. It's only 4 years ago. I should remember a lot of this, but I do remember Stephanie Russo. I believe she was station manager, one of the higher ups. Yeah, she was definitely and yeah, I just don't remember their names. I see their face though. I see their face in my mind.
So you get through the class and you pass the tests. Do you remember getting on the air the first time? And if not the first time, do you remember your feelings about getting behind the mic?
Yeah. So I mean, of course, as anybody naturally would, there was some, having some nerves being their first time. But like I said before that, I was a huge theater kid, and not so much theater now, but I'm a big music kid. Can't get enough of it. I love performing. I love like being in the spotlight. It comes natural to me. So I loved it. I was so excited to be on air. I was so excited to, again, it's just one of those things that I just love performing and being, in front of people and talking to people and being a performer, if you will. So I definitely it became very natural for me. And I also remember my parents, I'd have them tune in online from home in Buffalo,
Hmm.
and I remember vividly when they would call me after and they're like, Kennedy, like you have such a great radio voice. I'm like, I never knew. I never knew because I never did radio. And that was a huge boost of confidence that I never let go of. So
That's really great. Coming from the ancient times when I went to school, there was no listening online, but my family grew up lived locally, so they could hear me. But that's
aw,
that's such a nice feature to have,
that right?
that your friends and
Totally.
family could listen from a distance and give you that encouragement. But it sounds like you were used to performing. Did you do stuff in high school? Were you on stage, or did you
Yeah,
do
yeah. I
singing?
was a big theater kid. I was in all the musicals. I was in band. I first chair, first clarinet. Yeah, I mean the list goes on, and I continued that in college too. I kind of took made drama, put that in the back seat and focused more on the music thing. And then once I joined the radio, I picked up a journalism minor. Like it really changed my life, and clearly it did because now I work in radio. So
Yeah, that's amazing. So were there particular things? I mean, obviously you feel comfortable in front of a group or in front of a microphone, but were there things that you brought from your high school or previous experience that were useful as you got started at the station?
I mean, yeah, I mean, well, I would say just again my confidence and, especially like I said, when my parents told me I had a great radio voice, something that I never heard before, that really, made me grow a lot of confidence. But I think it was just the principle of me, liking being in the center of the spotlight and all that really helped, me prove that like you don't need radio experience to succeed. I,
Mm,
could compare myself to some people that may have been doing it for years, but I do also, on the other hand, there were some things that being new to radio, a lot of things I didn't know, a lot of things I weren't sure how to do. And that's where I'll have to, give all my thanks to Jasmine Jones, who, again, was my co producer. She was in radio, she was a radio major. And, we definitely had our own skills that we brought to the table, but hers were more so when it came to anything technical. I had never worked a board before. So, like, there were some things I would need to brush up on, and also with like branding and promoting our show. She really like worked on designing a graphic for our show. Like there's just a lot of things that like I didn't never even thought of, and that she really brought and made our show. Yeah, we really made it ours.
very cool. So how did you two connect? Was there someone saying, "Hey, we want to fill this, get someone to do this show, this EDM show," or how did you find each other and decide to work on this
Yeah,
program?
I don't remember it for sure, but I want to say when I was talking to the music director, John Mullen, when I was expressing interest in producing the show, they were the ones to tell me, actually, you know what? Another girl was asking about it too. You guys should connect. And so then they connected me with Jasmine because she also expressed interest. And that was, rare to find because, even after I graduated or like on the way out, it was hard for me to find somebody to take over the show because I'm like, we did all that work for all those years, and then just for it to not be touched anymore, which I'm sure it's not, but it's unique. Not everyone loves EDM, so I totally get it. But yeah, it was just it was the right timing, if you will.
Yeah. Did you guys connect about artists or about songs or was it?
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome because we developed a friendship, and we would send each other music, and we actually went to some shows together. And I would show her some artists. She showed me some songs that I still listen to this day. So it was awesome because I mean, just anybody that likes EDM, I get along with. I have internet friends that I'm even seeing next week at a festival that loves EDM. So
Hmm.
it definitely, yeah, we bonded a lot over EDM. So yep.
That's great. It was a few weeks ago that Jasmine and I spoke, but I seem to
Yeah.
recall her saying that basically when the idea came up, the two of you collaborated, and if it wasn't exactly both of your first time on the air, it was pretty close. That you were both pretty new to doing radio, at least live, and getting out there. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, definitely me. I know Jasmine, like, she took classes, and I think she was a year older than me too, so she definitely had a little more experience, having being a radio major. I don't know, I can't remember if she ever did it before college, but as far as like, I loved being on the mic, and I mean, she did too, but she was more of like the, producer type of person.
Hmm.
And meanwhile, like we split our show. It was 2 hours long. I would do the first hour, and she would, do her second hour. So we really split it evenly as best as we could. But we both had our own interests and skills we brought to the table.
That's very cool because not everybody gets a chance to step in right away and take over a show. A lot of people
I
start with
know.
Newsline or they're working on other stuff, and you two had this wonderful opportunity, and it seems like you really ran with it and had a lot of fun.
Really, truly, and I could go on and on all day about it, but it really changed my life because and I guess I could talk about it now, but I had an aha moment of, what I wanted to do for my career. Because I was a music major. I picked up drama and journalism minors. And it's like, people ask, what are you going to do with a music major? But then I would clarify that. I'm like, I'm really involved with the radio station. I host an EDM show. And they're like, whoa. And I never thought that it would turn into what I wanted to do for my career. I would be like, that's amazing. But I actually got to cover Electric Zoo Music Festival, which is in New York. And I got to cover it as a college student, so
Mm.
I went through the whole process of applying for credentials, and I've never covered a festival either before, so it was my first time doing that. And just the opportunities that WRHU gives you. I know that like a lot of the news folk and sports folk get a lot of opportunities, but people kind of forget that like I covered a music festival as a college student. Like, not a lot of people can say they do that. And they treated me just as if I was a professional. And I interviewed some big artists that weekend that I'm like, still, when I tell people today, they're like, "You interviewed Wooly?" Like, it's so cool to, kind of brag about. But yeah, that's what I would consider my aha moment after that experience where I'm like, yep, this is what I want to do professionally.
That is very cool. So were
Yeah.
you was it just you and a microphone going into this? What was your preparation for going to do this festival?
Yeah, so they let me borrow a XLR cable that plugs into your phone to record off of your phone, and mic obviously, and gave me like the WRHU mic flag. So I felt I was already going into it feeling like professional, because I remember they would say like that sometimes students would bring their own phone to record off their phone, and they don't want them to do that. They want to, give their students the opportunity to be a professional, not a college student, so that was my equipment part of it. And then just, the vibe. I was so open minded to the experience. And especially, I've been to Electric Zoo as an attendee. So being there as a media person was a whole nother experience, being able to kind of go backstage in the media area and, getting all the ins and outs of the festival experience that not everyone can do. Really just, was like, yeah, this was what I wanted to do. So,
That's amazing. So once you get all this material, once you do these interviews, are you putting those in the program, or are they going it
yeah,
separately?
yeah,
What'd you
yep.
do with that?
So I remember I definitely did that with my interviews, and I would chop them up, edit them in audience, or what's it called, audition. And but I also would throw in some other things. I think that I had went around and did like fan interviews of like, what are you most looking forward to at Electric Zoo, like that kind of thing, and incorporated that into my coverage. And of course mixed in songs that were played by some of the artists there, like, that obviously not recorded at the festival, but just songs from artists. But yeah, I just made it into a whole hour long package. I can't remember if I did 2 hours for that, but yeah, I really just kind of, made it a story, if you will, but in an hour long radio show.
That's amazing. Wow. Yeah, that I can see that being, a life-changing moment where you go, this is so incredibly cool. I'm going to do this. And were there people like John or other station members who were sort of pushing you in that direction or giving you good advice?
I mean, yes and no. I think the only reason why not, because they come from a sports and news background. There weren't a lot of people I could look up to that did EDM radio, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, a lot of the stuff that I did was me doing it on my own, or me, you know, just got my shooting for the stars. I have a dream and I'm going to make it happen, and yeah, I just made things happen. If I wanted advice, I would, seek it and I would ask for questions. But, when it came to the specifics of EDM and all that, I didn't really have anybody because I was one of a kind, if you will.
Right, right. It wasn't like a whole bunch of people were doing it. It was you and Jasmine,
Right.
and so you mentioned earlier that you did a little bit of Newsline and some other programs. What else were you doing in the early days once you were getting acclimated to the station?
Like at the radio or
Yeah,
just in general?
yeah.
There was actually a point where I almost considered applying to become the music director, but I ended up choosing to study abroad instead, and that would have been the only chance that I could have done it. But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I do kind of feel like I was in my own bubble at the radio, because not a lot of people really knew what I did because like no one listened to the EDM show, even though I would make it my personality almost. But so it was kind of, half and half, like half where I was in my own bubble, but I was in my own bubble doing my thing and killing it at the same time. Like I would be, I remember me and Jasmine, our first interview that we set up with an artist. I slid into their Instagram DMs, and that's how I pitched the interview. I literally, like, I can even pull it up now because it's like, you can see your messages from, I think it was in 2018 now. His name was Zach Martino. He was from Staten Island. And I legit remember saying, "Hi, my name's Kennedy. I host an EDM radio show at Hofstra Radio," and I went on, and he answered, and he came to the station. Like, he literally came to the station. He brought along a colleague, and that whole thing, again, I could go on and on, but that whole thing, it turned into an internship. The colleague said, "Hey, my manager's looking for some interns, college students, if you want to connect." And that was like my first internship, and the list goes on. So it really just like, even though I was in my own bubble, and of course I would talk to people at the station. I made myself known because I'm a people person, but I just felt like, kind of like the music department sometimes gets a little like, not as much as attention as they deserve. But also, and that kind of in turn might make people feel like they, can't do opportunities like that. Like, I think our show was the only show at the time interviewing artists. And that's crazy because, like, off the charts, like, those were big shows that like everyone wanted to be a part of, yet they were just going to their shift and doing, and I don't know,
Hmm.
it's hard because it's like I don't, I respect everyone's involvement, but like we really, really like did everything we could with Electro Beat, interviewing artists, no, covering festivals, and I think that they do now, but at the time, we were definitely kind of the only ones doing that.
Yeah, I think sometimes things go in waves depending on who's, at the
Right,
station and
right.
and who's involved in what thing. But that sounds so great. So I want to hear more about this. So you reach out to this artist, and he comes to the station. Now, did you put him on live on the air? Did you record a
No, yeah, so
program?
we pre-recorded it, and we went in the Pro Tools studio, and that's where Jasmine came in because I'd never recorded an interview, and like, I could look in my training book and look at, but she was such a natural with that part, of, having it all set up and, recording and the technical aspect. But we would both be on the mic, but I kind of took the lead, and I felt like I since I was a natural performer, if you will, I definitely would take the lead in a lot of things. And starting it off, you're listening to Electro Beat on WRH, that whole thing. um, but it was cool to have like somebody to, my co-producer to be on the mic too, and chime in and have stuff to say. And it was awesome because I think with the artist that we interviewed, Zach, this was his probably one of his first interviews, and he's huge now. I mean, I'm curious to see how many followers he has because, and I still see him. I still see him at shows, and he knows me now. He's got 71,000 followers on Instagram now, and I want to say at the time he's probably had maybe 10,000 or something. But
And
no,
he owes it all to
I know,
WRHU, right?
yeah, yeah, right. Cheers to that. But no, it's so cool because it's such a great story to tell people because, we all got to start somewhere. And the fact that like he gave us that, opportunity, I guess it goes both ways, but, he allowed us the opportunity to interview him, which really opened up a whole new door for me. And, the rest is history. I've interviewed probably over 50 artists in my life. Well, maybe even 100 now after the events I've worked. But yeah, to think that he was my first one, I'll always owe it to him, and I'll always tell him that whenever I see him at shows and we're talking. I'm like, "Did you guys know he was my first interview that I ever had?" Like,
Wow, that's cool. There's
no,
there's
yeah,
there's a great history in Hofstra Radio of uh, people bringing in artists and throughout the decades. And I can think of Jeff Foss when he hosted the post punk progressive pop party P5. He'd bring in tons of artists on Saturday nights and some
no,
performances, some interviews, and Joanne C on the Perfect Beat, and Todd Packer and Eric Hewler doing the local band show. So there's a real history and opportunity. And I guess the next thing I want to get to is not only is it cool that you get to interview this guy and put it on the air and you and Jasmine have the success, but then that leads to an internship. So what was that about?
yeah, yeah. I know it's wild. So, yeah. So his name's Zach Martino. He brought along, and I didn't know he was bringing anybody. So he brought along this other DJ named DJ Lodato. And I didn't know who he was, and I quickly got to learn who he was. But at the end of the interview, as they were on their way out, Sal Lodato, he was like, "Hey, is it cool if I connect you with my manager, Jared? Like, we're actually looking for some interns to have join us. Just some college age people. We're getting old, that kind of thing." And I'm like, "Oh my god, yeah." And yep, I connected with Jared, and it wasn't really like, an interview, a LinkedIn posting. It was very much under the table, I guess, or And he,
Informal, yeah.
yeah, informal, and just we hopped on a call, and he just asked me some questions, and I must have sounded really confident. And he's like, "All right, sounds good." And I would go to his place in Howard Beach every Thursday, and I would he has a channel, an EDM channel on Dash Radio, which I believe is now called Lit Live. They rebranded. And I did the schedule. I would schedule it every week. I would, we just use like Dropbox and whatever to download all the shows to, but it was like syndicated radio. So I would just again download the radio show for each week, put it in the prospective day, whether it's on Monday, Tuesday. Um, and then there was like other little tasks he had me do. One time he's like, "Here's a list of artists. Can you help me look up their manager contacts?" Kind of just sporadic tasks that he'd pay me for. But the overall thing was being the program director. Again, it's a small thing, but like I mean, even looking back, I'm like, that opportunity opened so many other doors. It honestly really got my foot in the door because I had the radio experience at that point doing electrobeat, but this was my gateway into the industry because
Mm.
he was a manager of a huge DJ that has gotten number one on dance radio before. And I met so many people. And even now that I work at iHeart, Jared knew a lot of people knows a lot of people at iHeart that like even now today I still like talk to Jared very often. I'm good friends with him. um and like it's a crazy like full circle moment where back then I dreamed of working for iHeart, dreamed of knowing these people, and now it's like I talk so casually with these people, like I never would have thought.
Mm. That's amazing. So you're having all the success making these connections. What's that doing in terms of your academics? Because you said are you pushing to change your studies to radio, or are you sticking with music? What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, again, it was so hard for me to even decide what I like. Picked drama just cause, and had the music minor. And I also went to Hofstra because they allowed you to do that. There's some universities where like you got to pick a major, and then if you switch, you're gonna fall behind. And Hofstra being in the liberal arts school, I was able to do a lot of different things, a lot of different subjects, a lot of different activities, and all that. But yeah, so I switched. So I joined RHU second semester freshman year. That summer when I was starting to get involved with the radio, and like I'm like, okay, this seems like it's something I want to do. My first semester of sophomore year, I switched from, and I that's when I also was like, drama ain't for me anymore. Like I'll still, I'll still continue the minor, but I switched from to a music major, a BA in music, and a minor in drama, and then I picked up a journalism minor because again, the radio experience was enough for me. And I still, I had to take journalism classes, and I took radio classes as part of that journalism minor. But the biggest thing for me was I didn't want to lose the music part of it because
Mm.
that was what I found enjoyment in. It's like when in classes because like again when I said earlier, what are you going to do with a music major? I didn't really be a music major for the purpose of being in the music industry. I just enjoyed music classes, and here's a fun fact: my first semester as a music major, I got a 4.0. So I'm like, okay, I think I made the right decision here. And so I really just did it for again enjoying being a music major and learning the content and topics, and it's where I found my enjoyment, and that's huge because it's what you're majoring in, and you should love it. And I didn't look at it as, well, help me get a job in the music industry. I mean, of course I did think that, but I knew that I had to bulk up my experience and my resume and my, you know, with the radio station and doing all these interviews. I knew that that's what would eventually help me pay off.
Hmm. Hmm. I think you've kind of already answered this, but I like to sort of circle back and ask this question and see if we can bring things back together. But if you can go back to your mindset when you're starting at Hofstra Radio in that the middle of your freshman year, what did you think the radio station would mean to you at the time, and what did it become?
Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, certainly never would have thought I would have made it my career. I mean,
Hmm.
that's definitely the big thing. But I don't know. I mean, I was so enthusiastic and open minded about the experience that like I really didn't know where it was going to take me. I genuinely just joined for fun. I did not join because I wanted a career in radio. I didn't even think that that was, something that was even possible. I mean, I just joined for fun. And it took me a few years of all the experience that I did, that, like, the idea was enticing of being having a career in radio. But when I did that festival and covered Electric Zoo, that's when I knew, okay, I got to make this happen. And yeah, so I mean, just looking back, it's just mind boggling to me. It feels like I've been doing radio my whole life,
Mm,
but it's, I mean, I got to Hofstra in 2016, so it's been 7 years now, 2017. So 7 years of radio. And I can't stress it enough that it's changed my life. I mean, I definitely wouldn't be where I am without, taking that first risk of, talking to John Mullen. So
mm, mm. Yeah, there's so many folks who walked into the station at various times and wanted to be doctors or computer science majors or didn't know what they wanted to do, and they found that focus and that family and that sense of encouragement at the radio station. Sounds like it really worked out for you.
yeah, and also just like, they pride themselves in being one of the top college radio stations in the country. So definitely very lucky in that regard too, because if it was just like any old radio that, you know, didn't put a lot of money, time, and effort into making their, radio station good, that could have also affected how this my outcome in my career could be. But since, it is literally one of the best college radio stations in the country, I was very lucky and fortunate to be in good hands.
Absolutely. Well, this was so much fun. I
Yeah.
love these stories, and I've got some more questions, and maybe you've got some more stories, and we can do this again sometime.
Yes, I could talk about myself all day, but it's more so just because, like, I want it to be an inspirational story for people, like, younger, that you can make it happen. I made it happen. Doesn't mean you can't. So it's fun to, hope in hopes to inspire others.